Well, hello, friends. If you are watching this channel, is because you have known of me for some time. You may have heard my story, and you also may have heard that I published a book. And although I spent about a year with a ghostwriter trying to bring all my stories in a verbal and memory form into paper. Uh, Obviously, not every detail was accounted for, and I thought it would be a benefit to my friends, family, and anyone reading the book to hear from me maybe a little bit more of content or context of what went on in most of the scenes that I cover in the book. So without more delay, I wanted to touch upon the first chapter, which I called the prison island. And in this chapter, I recount how I left Cuba in a raft, and around midnight, we had a big scare. So let me walk back a little bit before we get there. We started getting ready to leave Cuba, I would say, in mid-August of 1994. During that time, it was quite troublesome in Havana. There were, for the first time that and many people can remember, there were street protests in the cities, in the streets of the city of Havana, particularly in the area of Malecon. You know, the city wall, the seawall that holds the city from the sea. And we made a family decision to leave Cuba. During the next few days, it was much of a blurb. I mean, I was obviously many years ago. I was 17, 18, but I do remember that my family got together with a neighbor, and we combined all of our efforts. We combined all of our capital, and by capital I mean my mother sold our sofa, my bedroom set, which it's later explained in the book. It's got quite a story behind it. We sold our color TV, which, by the way, was the only color TV in the block, and we probably spent about 3 weeks. We spent about 3 weeks collecting enough gear to leave Cuba, right? So all in all, there were 17 of us leaving as a group, and as such, we needed a big raft, right? So we ended up gathering a small fisher's boat with a terrible engine. Mechanically, it was terrible, and we ended up getting also 2 rafts, which the idea was to tie them behind the big boat. Big boat. It was about 18 feet long, so not a big boat indeed, especially not carrying 17 people. It was very cramped. And the boat, we had to paint it, we had to sand it, paint it, we had to repair the engine, we had to repair the transmission to the propeller, we had to get a new propeller, we had to buy, obviously, a compass, we had to buy some water, bottles of water, juice, orange juice we bought, and we also gathered crackers, ham, spam, things that could survive without refrigeration for up to a week. We didn't know how long we were going to be at sea. From reference, we knew that a lot of folks who leave Cuba in a raft spend between 5 days and 10 days at sea trying to reach the shores of the United States or being picked up by the Coast Guard. For example, if we know if you spend more than 10 days at sea, you are probably lost. You are probably either too far north, west, heading towards the Bahamas, and that could be troublesome. Or you could be, going straight east. I'm sorry, straight west into what would be the Gulf of Mexico, and then it's likely you will never be found. So we knew at that time that we needed to be conscious of the current, the sea current that we were traveling on, and I can go into this detail later on in a later video. And we needed to be conscious of our due north direction. And we didn't know that the U.S. Coast Guard was canvassing the north coast of Cuba during that time. We hoped to run into the Coast Guard as soon as possible, the U.S. Coast Guard, as soon as possible, since there were children on our boat. I was 18, my brother was 17, and there were 3 other kids, I believe 11, 3, and 5. So there were very small children among us. So we were not ready for a 10-day travel in the seas by ourselves without much assistance. Our goal was to reach help as soon as we left Cuba's national water and we entered international waters. So long story short, we spent 3 weeks building this raft. One night we were ready, everything was done. We packed everything. We took the boat which we were building on that neighbor that collaborated with us. We built it in their house because their house was just right by the sea. The back of their house was the ocean. So we lowered the boat. We put it in the sea. We tiled the ropes. We tiled the raft. We get everybody loaded on the boat, and we cannot leave. As it happens, there was too much weight from all these people, as you can imagine, and the boat was lowered into the sea, and there was a very small gap between the sea level and the edge of the boat. And one of the guys that knew what they were doing, one of the adults, right, as I call them, he said, "Look, we can't leave. We need to raise the edge of the boat. We need to buy boards of wood, put them around the boat and make the boat taller, right? That needs to be sanded down. It needs to be bolt on, maybe even covered with some resin so it's waterproof." So very disappointingly, we had to bring the boat back and spent another 4 or 5 days working on that. Another 4 or 5 days that were very, very stressful, since we really didn't know how long before the Cuban government would say, "Hey, that's it. Nobody else can leave Cuba." If you don't know, during that time, the Cuban government and the U.S. government had a quasi agreement where anyone who wanted to leave Cuba by any means necessary, illegal, right, in a raft like we were doing, was free to do so, right? Before that and after, it's the Cuban Coast Guard was always looking for these people who try to escape Cuba and put them in prison. It's illegal to escape, to run away, and to leave Cuba without a passport, which is not easy to get your hands on. So we didn't know, if what the deadline was. We knew it was coming anytime soon, but we didn't know when. So every day we needed to hurry and finish this boat assembly as soon as possible. So when we finally got it ready, we did not want it to wait for the night. So in the middle of the day, I believe was shortly after 3 o'clock, say after lunch. So about 3 o'clock, I'll say, we called out to the neighbors for help, and they help us bring down the boat, and that created, obviously some commotion, and some more neighbors came out, and they came to say goodbye, to help. um, I, it was big blur. We were all excited but also very stressed out. I remember that right before I took my last foot off the Cuban land, never to be back, by the way. I have never been back to Cuba to this date. We're talking about 2020. Right before, one of our neighbors, a little girl across the street from my house, I remember she waved and said, "Don't forget to write. Don't forget to call." Right? They knew they were going to miss us, right? And we knew we would miss them as well. So with tears in our eyes, we pushed the boat into the water, jumped on, fired the engine, and started taking off. Still, I'm sure, very shaken from the whole experience, and looking back and seeing our friends and some relatives becoming smaller and smaller up on the coast, waving. Obviously, we were 100% unsure, 100% unsure of what our future looked like. We just knew it was not going to be in Cuba. And that was important, right? For all of us, we have made a decision that it was worth dying at sea than trying to have a future in that island. That is a choice, right? That is the choice that every rafter makes when leaving Cuba. I rather die at sea, in the worst case scenario, right? I'd rather die at sea than grow up with the future that this country and this government has for me. So we had not sailed away from the coast 300 meters when the engine overheated. Obviously, too much weight, because we raised the level of the boat and it was crowded. The engine was not getting enough cool, fresh air, overheated, and it burned. Well, that meant a couple of things. One, what do we do with this, 200-pound engine sitting on our boat and slowing us down? And two, we have to roll. Like now we have to row all the way. We just, our friends were still there. We could still see our friends and family. We were just off the coast, not 10 minutes into our journey, and the engine blew up. So there was a little bit of an argument, between the adults, and obviously the male adults did not want to proceed. They wanted to go back, fix the engine, go again. And I vividly remember my mother arguing very strongly, no, we gotta go right now, we gotta go. And I was silent as a kid, but I was 100% with her. We didn't know when this deadline would finish. We could very well go back, and by the time we got back, be illegal again to leave Cuba, right? So we had to proceed. It was crucial that we moved forward and go ahead and proceed with our journey. So those who knew how unbolted the engine and threw it in the water. I recall somebody saying something like, "Well, that's $300 into the water." $300 for us who had to sell our furniture and I sold my bicycle and my little Seiko watch. Just any dollars that we could cobble together to combine with this other family, because just alone, my mom, my brother, and I couldn't possibly afford it. So every dollar counted. So you roll with the punches, right? In any language, in any culture. So we dumped the engine and we started rowing. No, not we, them, the adults. I was not allowed to row until the next day. So we're rowing, and I think everyone was so exhausted from the stress, from the weeks of building, that I personally fell asleep, and I woke up, which is where the book, starts. I woke up, I'll say close to midnight. And if you ever been at sea at night, it can be quite um, disorienting, I think will be the right word. It's pitch black on top, pitch black on the bottom, left, right, except for a string of lights behind us, which was Havana. And I woke up from nothing specific, but I could feel something. And I remember looking around, and if I remember it, everyone was out. Like I think just everyone just fell asleep. You know, from the stress, tired. You know, finally having some sort of peace, and we were finally on our way, and somehow everyone fell asleep, and perhaps not for long, but we were sort of adrift, and I remember feeling something, and suddenly I started hearing something, and I couldn't see it, but I could hear ahead of us some sort of rumbling, and it started getting louder and louder, and I still couldn't see anything. And by now everyone was awake, and we were all looking left and right, and signaling to each other like what's going on. And slowly we began to see a shape, and as we started sort of like looking up and up, we began to see a shape, a very tall shape, and as it happens, there was a steamship coming into the port of Havana right behind us. So this big ship, which obviously could not see this tiny little raft ahead of them, was heading towards the port of Havana and about to run us over. So when we finally figured out what it was, we could already see the bubbling in front of the ship heading towards us, and just coming closer and closer. We started paddling, rowing this way, that way, just anywhere but north, which was the direction we were taking. And we made it. Obviously, we ended up paddling left of the big ship. When it finally passed, our boat was like just being moved, up and down, like everything was rocking left and right, quite violently from the wake of the big ship. They obviously didn't see us at all, and that was quite scared. We recovered, and then I don't think anyone else slept from that point except for the little kids. From that point forward, we kept rowing through the night. By the time daylight broke, we could identify in the horizon behind us the towers of the nuclear power in Santa Cruz del Norte. So we were still within sight of the tall buildings, constructions of Cuba, but quite ahead and way on our way. Let's see, because I don't want to jump into chapter 2 before another video. So yeah, this is as much as I cover on chapter 1, but I thought it was important. I thought it was important to give this book a little bit of context, right? The book starts with us, me waking up middle of the night, and the scare and the sound. But I thought it was important to have and to add a little bit of content to how I got there, for those who are thinking about reading the book, or those who read it and wanted to find a little more. Well, As you can imagine, I want you to like, subscribe, and follow. Thank you so much.